Greetings, deep divers. It's Maddie from madeupbymaddie.com bringing you another smashing episode of The Dive. For this week's transformation, our inspiration will be none other than Marilyn Monroe's 1962
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
look. Today we enter deeper down the rabbit hole of the 1960s, taking you to 62. Let's jump in. And now for the headlines of 1962. The Seattle World's Fair kicked off on April 21st, 1962, which saw the finished construction of the Space Needle, drawing in nearly 10 million people in its 6-month run. On July 9th, 1962, Andy Warhol's famous soup can exhibit opens in Los Angeles. The most intense days of the Cold War took place during the Cuban Missile Crisis between October 16th and October 29th, 1962. The US and the Soviet Union were on the brink of a nuclear war when both sides eventually stood down as a result of careful military action on both ends. And finally, America had 3 retail giants open their doors in the same year. Kmart, Target, and Walmart all started operations by the summer of 1962. Now, I'll be sharing the 8 albums I listened to during my week in 1962. On Sunday, I listened to Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music, Volumes 1 and 2 by Ray Charles. So blending different styles of music, this album has a really different feel as it explores so many genres. It has elements of country, jazz, and folk. This release really kept me guessing what was next every step of the way. My favorites off this album are You Don't Know Me and Born to Lose. On Monday, I listened to Surfin' Safari by the Beach Boys. So this is the very first release from the Beach Boys, and this record may have very well kicked off the California surf sound. This album is packed with heavenly harmonies, really fun upbeat melodies, and really innocent subject matter. It really reminds me of walking down the Santa Monica Pier on any given summer day. My favorite of this one is the classic 409. The Beach Boys' Surfin' Safari. This was a great debut album, had a very steady pace, but it was like just the blueprint of where they were about to go. Brian Wilson, genius. Stay tuned for more Beach Boys, by the way, for sure. And on Tuesday, I listened to Bob Dylan's self-titled debut, Bob Dylan. So yes, this is another debut album. This is Bob Dylan's first effort. It really showcases his musical ability, careening through traditional folk standards, but putting his own twist on every track. At the very young age of 20, Dylan commands attention with his deliberate choices. It's basically an album of covers with only 2 original contributions from the singer, which are Talkin' New York and Song to Woody. My favorites off this album are You're No Good, Talkin' New York, In My Time of Dyin', Highway 51 Blues, Baby Let Me Follow You Down. Bob Dylan's debut, also really good. Like I mentioned, not a lot of originals, but it's baby steps. And if those are his baby steps, I can't wait to see what else he has in store. Spoiler alert, I already know because I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan in this challenge, and he's amazing. He's so good. On Wednesday, I listened to Frank Sinatra and Count Basie's album, Sinatra Basie, an historical music first. Pairing 2 musical legends together, this 1962 collaboration features Count Basie on piano for a majority of the track listing, with Sinatra crooning on the mic. Coming in at a short but sweet 33 minutes, this 10-track masterpiece leaves the audience satisfied. Definitely left me satisfied. My favorite off this one is Looking at the World Through Rose-Colored Glasses. It was a great pairing of the 2 artists, and this is one of 2 or 3 albums that they actually came together on. And on Thursday, I listened to Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Sherry and 11 Others. Yet another debut. Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons step on the scene in style with their perfected doo-wop sensibility and a knack for harmonizing. Frankie Valli's vocal range is awe-inspiring, to say the least. It's really hard to picture anyone else who comes close to matching his undeniable talent. My favorites off this record, Oh Carol, Big Girls Don't Cry, and of course, Sherry. Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, are you kidding me? This was such a great record. It was so good. So good. Sherry, of course, everyone knows Sherry, but all the other cuts on the album, so solid. I love Frankie Valli's voice. It's so good. And Friday brought me Do You Love Me, Now That I Can Dance, by The Contours. It's really hard to imagine so many hits packed on one single record, despite only a few actually charting, which is kind of unbelievable. This band really possesses an extremely tightly knit sound. The well-rehearsed moments on this record are just spine-tingling. This masterpiece is all killer, no filler. My favorites off this record, Do You Love Me, It Must Be Love, Claudia, So Grateful, The Old Miner, Funny, and Move, Mr. Man. The Contours. They're so underrated. Again, this is another musical group that you don't really hear a lot about. They weren't the most prolific in their time. However, this album is perfection. It is 100% perfection. This was their only major release. I don't think they had another release until maybe the 70s in terms of full-length albums. The members kind of shifted around from what I remember learning. If this is just their one kiss to the public, what a kiss it was. And closing out the week, I listened to Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs. The epitome of cool. This completely instrumental rock, soul, and R&B album is the last debut I listened to on this 1962 journey. Twangy guitars play over the organ-heavy tracks, with the laid-back drumming offering a solid backbone for each song. My favorites off this record, Green Onions and Mo Onions. Alright, and just when you thought I was complete, I decided to listen to a bonus album this week, Roy Orbison's Crying. So clearly not getting enough of 1962, I took a chance on yet another album, and boy did it pay off. Being a huge fan of the song Crying for so many years, I took a dive into the album that spawned the hit, and it was really the perfect way to close off the week, close off the year. Orbison's voice, a sweet lullaby, is really infectious and haunting. My favorites off this album are Crying and Dance. And now it's movie time. My first movie of 1962 was Carnival of Souls. What a weird movie. It's a psychological thriller that just really ties everything together in the end, but still leaves you wondering, like, what did I just watch? It's seriously one of the most disturbing movies I've seen. Again, 1960s, not an excessive amount of gore, if any. This movie doesn't really have that. The filmmaking is where the talent's at. That's what shines through. That's what scares you. The sparseness. And it was shot on an extremely low budget, and you wouldn't be able to tell. Next, I watched the Japanese film An Autumn Afternoon. This is a touching story about a family dynamic in modern day Japan, modern day set for 1962. It's introspective. It takes a while to actually catch on what's happening. Yes, there are subtitles. Yes, it is in Japanese. The dialogue hits the ground running. Eventually you catch on if you're paying attention, and it's really great. I definitely recommend it. Lawrence of Arabia. This movie is 3 hours, almost 4 hours long, and it's so good. It's an epic adventure. It's big budget, it tells a story, the story is easy to follow. I have a short attention span. If I see a runtime that's anything over an hour and 30 minutes, 2 hours long, I'm already kind of reluctant to watch it. This was a huge leap of faith for me to watch this movie and actually commit to seeing it. I did have to break it up into 2 parts because I wanted to eat, but if it could capture someone's attention span that's as short as mine and keep me engaged, I highly recommend this movie. And finally, To Kill a Mockingbird, released on Christmas Day, 1962. This movie came out only about 2 years after the book. For those of you who haven't read the book or seen the movie, it's a classic. I've never seen the movie and I cannot really remember the book. I might not have read it, but I already knew what it was about. So going in, watching the movie was such a great experience. There's a harrowing story. The actors are great. It's set up beautifully, and I definitely recommend To Kill a Mockingbird. Gregory Peck is amazing.
It's time for the big splash.
And now for my big splash recommendations. For music, it was hands down super easy. I knew the moment I listened to it that it was my favorite album of the year, and it was The Contours' Do You Love Me? Based on how many songs I put as favorites, it stands out above the rest. It's such a shame that this band did not put out more music. It's unbelievable to me. Highly recommend. Listen to this album. The best of 1962 in my opinion. And the movie, this was a toss-up, but I had to go with Lawrence of Arabia because it exceeded my expectations. It kept my attention. At an almost 4-hour runtime, I was engaged. I was excited. I was rooting for the characters. I was in. So Lawrence of Arabia, check it out. If you have the time, even if you don't, break it up like I did.
It's the look.
All right, so now we're gonna talk about the look. So this is Marilyn Monroe's very famous, very sultry look for when she sang Happy Birthday to President Kennedy in 1962. Now, looking at this, I kept a lot of consistency with Marilyn's looks throughout the time. It's not exactly a cut crease, but her eyelids are definitely in the forefront. It's not as sharp of a line, it's very blended. So I kept that very consistent. I did not use concealer to cut the crease. I actually just set the lid in more of a pale color and then went around with a darker color to shape out the crease. And that seemed to do the trick without looking too dramatic, because she never really rocked a super dramatic cut crease. Another thing, looking at the pictures of her, especially in this period, she had a glowy complexion. I definitely did not go exact with the hair. The hair that she wore this night was a little more of like I guess a bouffant type of flip, and I kept this more classic Marilyn. That was just a preference. Yeah, I do notice the difference. Also the lip, I went with like a bolder lip. I think I wanted to do like a more dramatic Marilyn, or like a more like classic in my head Marilyn, but she is more of like a coral type of lip color. So if I would go back, I'd probably lighten the lip a little bit, but I love the look. I think it came out great. And I think it's true to form. You see that and you see Marilyn Monroe. So yeah, that's what I did in 1962. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If you want, you can always check out my website, madeupbymaddie.com, where you can see my blog, view my portfolio. My site is available in English and in Spanish, and of course you can contact me or book me, as I am a worldwide makeup artist and I would love to be a part of your world. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time.